And we earlier spoke to Simon Lee, who is a co-director, International Business and Chinese Enterprise Program. We spoke to him about infrastructure, employment and investment. Let's listen to what he had to say.
I think the most direct way is to have some sort of tax incentive, even tax-free, because they invest huge amounts of money in building all the infrastructure. And so some incentive can allow them to actively participate in such construction. You know, the competition is on global basis. Many countries, especially in Southeast Asia, are all affected hit seriously by the pandemic. So there's a kind of competition. So sooner the better. And still, because India is the fifth or the sixth biggest economy in the world, still has many attractiveness to attract foreign investment. So maybe zero tax at the beginning years. Once they build the infrastructure, a lot of their money, then they can recruit many people, many employees. You know, population, manpower is not a problem in India. So the thing is how to get the money to attract foreign investment. I think the government should spend more money in engaging in more building infrastructure, because infrastructure can provide long-term engine to the economic growth of Indian government. But it's not a very short-term gain, because building infrastructure needs a long, very huge amount of investment. So maybe some sort of incentive to stimulate the construction industry, also to attract the foreign direct investment, can provide a boost to the construction of the infrastructure. And then also with the heavy engagement in the building of the infrastructure, the construction industry can employ many people. This can alleviate the high unemployment rate comparatively. I mean, unemployment rate of like 7% is still high in many economies. And then when the unemployment rate can be reduced, then this can stimulate consumption, then again can stimulate the domestic economic growth. Many countries, including India, hit seriously from the pandemic. I think the government should announce some sorts of relief to all classes of people, especially the middle class, because they suffer the most. And you know, GST contribute quite significantly to India's revenue. So some allowance deductions, such as tuition fee, rebate to the home loan interest, I think are helpful to stimulate consumption. On the other hand, the Indian government should make some sort of long-term measure about the sustainability and stability of the revenue. Now, the budget is still in deficits, around 6% to GDP, reduced from 9-point-something percent to GDP last year. But in the long run, the government can not totally rely on borrowing or from the very narrow gaps of the middle class or corporate tax, still quite low compared to other countries in Asia. To generate sustainable revenue to support huge government expense.
And we also spoke to Andrew K.P. Ling from Hong Kong. He's an international and independent strategist. He gave us an insight on how the problem of inequality should be tackled through the upcoming budget in India.
One of the biggest problems facing India is inequality. A lot of the poor farmers, especially in the villages, they do not see that their livelihood have improved a lot. In fact, there is a great inequality in India. The top 10% of the richest Indians own 80% of the nation's wealth. And compare with, it's only second to Russia in terms of inequality. So I think that to create a more balanced society requires a great deal of effort. And the budget is of course, a very powerful tool to address that.
So, talking about another important point, Mr. Paranjpe, we saw last year a big supply chain crisis. Where does India stand as far as supply chains across the globe are concerned, and where is then any opportunity, if any, and India can convert that opportunity for as far as the supply chain crisis is concerned?
Yes, there was a supply chain crisis when it comes to manufacturing chips and also in the shipping, and that has affected our exports. But I think our biggest, as it were, export is actually brain power, the work we do, not only BPO type of work, but the software that we develop. So I don't think we were affected as much as other countries. But, the real paradox of last year was that the whole world kept emphasizing on the green economy and investing in the green economy, including EV and other things, which is wonderful. But the demand for real commodities, oil, aluminum, steel, iron ore, coal, all of this keeps going up. So what's happening is that there is a contradiction between the way the world is moving, which is towards green energy, and the fact that the old economy has not ended as yet. And similarly, you see a very interesting phenomenon, how some of the biggest IPOs are in the new economy, and the old economy, I mean, Nika's, I think, market cap exceeds that of Coal India, which is the biggest manufacturer of coal in the world. So these are the contradictions of our times, which India has to negotiate. But as I said, when I looked at the economic survey, the barbell strategy is to compensate and to account for, you might say, problems on both sides of the spectrum. So I think we are well positioned now, after a contraction of our economy last year, to another growth phase as we come out of Omicron. I hope that, we are not medical specialists, but from what we read, it seems as if it's tapering off, and certainly it's not as deadly as the second wave of corona, the Delta variant, was. So our health infrastructure hopefully will not be completely overwhelmed, and the number of able-bodied people who succumb to the second wave, I hope that doesn't happen. So these are encouraging signs.
And we spoke to Andrew, Mr. Andrew, we heard him, and he was talking about inequality. What are your views on that inequality?
Inequality is a global phenomenon. You look at the top 10 richest people in the world, they have a bigger share of the world economy, the world resources, than the bottom 40% of the world's population, which is almost 3 billion people. So 10 individuals in the world have more wealth than 3 billion people. So this is one of those times in human history where things are very strange. And I'll give you another example. The market capitalization of Apple, one company,
absolutely,
is more than the GDP of India.
Tesla.
India's GDP is less than 3 trillion. But does it mean that India as a country, as an economy, as a nation of 1.4 billion people is less important than Apple, one company? Obviously not. So I think that we also see on the other side global philanthropy going to levels that we've never seen in human history, not only with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but many other initiatives, so that the private philanthropy of the rich people in the world is almost like the spending of major countries. So all I'm trying to say is that to be future ready, we have to factor in all these things. And what this government has done, which is really noteworthy and praiseworthy, is that those who are most needy, who have no livelihood or who've lost their income, they've made sure that food grain has reached these people. So that is the way to tackle inequality. When the economy comes back into normalcy, the same jobs which were lost, if not the same, similar jobs will be created. New sectors will have more employment. But the welfare measures of this government are really creditworthy. And that has saved a lot of millions and millions of Indians from misery and poverty, which is unimaginable, because the Oxfam report estimates that 50 million Indians went into poverty because of COVID. And the government tried to reach all of these people through direct cash transfer, direct grain transfer, and measures which actually improve their standard of living.
Absolutely.
I think that And that kind of spending has to go on. And I must also say that many corporates, even though they had no production, their factories were closed, they kept paying their workers. So the corporates in India have also shown, compassion and responsibility. I think the real crunch has been in the middle. People who had shops, people who had small and medium scale industries, those have been shut down, and the unorganized sector has no social security to speak of, no job security to speak of. They have been affected. There have been job losses in those incomes, in that vector of our economy, or that sector, if you like.
Absolutely.
And I think only government spending and some social organization on the part of, I've seen initiatives in big cities where you have food banks, you have clothes banks, because most of us have surpluses. We just need smart systems to distribute these surpluses. All of us have clothes we don't need in the
Absolutely.
winters. So we have to have more people's participation to remove or reduce inequality.
And Mr. Paranjpe, over the last few years, we have seen some sectors, skill sector is easily reskilling itself. They are moving up the chain. But job crisis is there in India. We have been talking about that. Now startups are being presented as a solution to that. That's also more in services sector. What about first job crisis? Are startup, they are the real solution to that? And what about jobs in manufacturing sector?
You see, startups may not, be the solution because they may not hire thousands and thousands of people. I think we have to create more opportunities for work, not just jobs, which also means the informal sector of the economy. I'm expecting something on that in the budget, to give them incentives. For example, you go around people supplying tea or small services all over India, on the pavements, near intersections. These kinds of services, these are people who are also self-employed, they don't rely on the government. And we have to incentivize and also regulate some of these sectors so that they also don't become polluting, because you see, when you have an unregulated vendor, they're going to throw their trash all around. And who's going to pick up that, So I think that there's a lot of opportunity in India if we incentivize as well as, regulate a little bit the unorganized sector and help people help themselves, because you saw what happened with the railway entrance exams. There's a crisis. For one government jobs, there are lakhs of applicants. So we have to send the message to the people that these so-called government jobs are going to be, especially at the lower levels, are going to be less and less. So people have to learn to help themselves, and we have to create the ecosystem for that. So just as the startup ecosystem has to be made more robust through less regulation, as I was saying, the economic survey talks about patents and how the patents in India have increased.
Absolutely.
In comparison with before. But we are still so far behind. Even a small country like Korea had 1.6 lakh patents last year. China has the most. India is far behind. We have about 50,000 patents a year. So I guess we have to make things easy. Ease of doing business has to go up in India, and ease of ending a business. If you have a business and you try to close it in India, it's practically impossible. You have to show losses for 3 years before you can close a business. You should be able to open a business easily and close it easily. And I was talking to Mr. Manish Sabharwal sometime back of Team Lease. He's shown us a way to really leverage India's talent pool. You talked about skilling. But he was telling me about the number of regulations at the central and state level. They run into hundreds. The permissions required, the sanctions you have to take. And as I said, people are very reluctant to give loans after all the bad loans, which the very big cats got the bad loans and ran away. So you have to change all this and make money easily available. Money should chase good ideas as it happens abroad. And in India, it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. And also, I would like to shift focus to one point which we didn't discuss. It's about Bitcoin and blockchain. There's something which clearly not many people saw it coming, though it was an undercurrent and the youth of this country was heavily involved After all, 10 crore accounts were there and government reacted later. What about government's approach as far as Bitcoin and blockchains are concerned? Globally, it's a big issue. Well, clearly not all the overall usage of Bitcoin and blockchain is in right hands or for right purposes. What do you think about this new Bitcoin craze? Though it has come down from peak levels, but what about this?
I think it's a matter of great concern, and the government is cognizant of it. It can be used for...
We can see the budget papers being brought in the parliament, and here we see this ritual we have seen over the last few years being maintained. Budget papers, the crucial ones, being brought to the parliament, and we can see them now being the security check happening here. And budget paper, it's a overall protocol that happens, and it's a formality that is done. Budget papers have been brought in, though this time the budget is going to be paperless. E-budget, we are calling it, from the last few years since the COVID-19 pandemic struck. So coming back to the...
In fact, just a little comment on that. The word budget actually means a satchel, a leather satchel in which in Britain earlier they used to bring these papers. Of course, now the papers run into trunks and trunks, but it's really a sign of the times that we are moving to the e-format. And the economic survey is available for download. I've downloaded it yesterday. The statistical tables are available. And even a non-specialist, but should I say, well-informed citizen of India can now participate in this very important process in the country. So going back to Bitcoins, obviously it's a very difficult area. It's cryptocurrencies, as the word crypto suggests. You can't regulate them because they are non-local, and the blockchains are impossible to completely track. But the danger is that it can be used for illegal activities, money laundering, and also gambling. As you rightly said, our youth is sometimes, or not just youth, many people are encouraged, to make risky investments in Bitcoins, not just Bitcoins, but a slew of cryptocurrencies which are now available for any of us to invest in with very little regulation. And what happens if you make a windfall? It's not taxed. You're not taxing your income. The only way to find out is you put, say, 1 lakh rupees in some cryptocurrency, and it was returned, let's say it doubled and 2 lakhs came into your account. Unless you're asked to account for that windfall or that doubling. And people can say, no, I don't know where it came from or blah, blah.
Right.
So I'm saying it's a taxation issue, it's a money laundering issue, it's an illegal activities issue, and it's a gambling issue.
All right, on that account, we will slip into a short break on WION. Our budget coverage will continue here, and we will continue to cover budget. It's 1 hour when the budget will be announced in Parliament. Keep on watching WION. WION, now available in your country. Download the app and get all the news on the move.